makes a horror movie scary isn't always what's on the screen. It's what was real when the cameras were rolling. The Babadook had no flashy effects, no traditional monster jumps, but it disturbed audiences in a way that lingered. Between actors breaking down, props disappearing, and a child's screams pulled straight from real moments, here are 10 scary facts you didn't know about the Babadook, and why they still haunt people today. Number 1, the pop-up book was handmade, and no one knows where it went. There wasn't a factory printing out copies. The Mr. Babadook book that appears in the movie was built by hand, page by page, by artist Alex Uhaj. Each flap, fold, and creepy cutout was carefully crafted in real life. There were no digital effects, no props recycled from another movie, just physical paper, layered ink, and hours of design work. Only a few copies were ever made for production, and once filming wrapped, they were locked away. But one of those books, the original, completely disappeared. Crew members say it was accounted for, then suddenly gone. Jennifer Kent later confirmed that it was never returned and still hasn't turned up. Not in a studio vault, not in a collector's hands, just gone. Years later, a limited number of replica books were created for fans, sold through Kickstarter, but none were the real one. The actual book, the one that shows up on Amelia's doorstep, hasn't been seen since filming ended. And if you believe in stories sticking to their pages, maybe that's exactly where it still is. Number 2, the Babadook was played by a real man in a suit, not CGI. The monster had bones, fabric, and a heartbeat. Actor Tim Purcell stepped inside the Babadook's long coat and claws for what would become his first and only movie role. His face was never shown. His name barely appeared in the credits, but his movements, his silhouette, that twitching, crooked crawl, that was all real. Jennifer Kent refused to use computer-generated effects to bring the creature to life. Instead, she turned to stop motion, puppetry, and practical design to create something that felt like it belonged to old nightmares. The Babadook's face was sculpted with pale features and hollow eyes. The coat was heavy. The top hat was too tall. Tim Purcell had to adjust his entire posture just to wear it. Most of his scenes were shot on wires, with exaggerated gestures captured at odd frame rates to make everything feel slightly off. The style was inspired by 1920s horror, movies like Nosferatu, where the fear wasn't in the face, but in the way something moved. The result wasn't smooth or modern. It was raw, and that rawness made the monster feel like something pulled straight out of sleep paralysis. Number 3, the Babadook only appears for 10 minutes, but viewers report seeing him more. You could time it. Start the stopwatch the moment he shows up. Add it all together and the Babadook is only on screen for about 10 minutes, but most people swear it's longer. Some say they saw him standing in corners. Others think he flickered in the background of scenes where he doesn't actually appear. Rewatches don't help. The feeling gets stronger, not weaker. That was part of Jennifer Kent's design. The movie uses shadow placement, distant silhouettes, and sharp sound cues to create the illusion that he's always nearby. In several scenes, nothing actually moves, but the audience holds their breath anyway. Cinematographer Radek Ladchuk used subtle lighting shifts and negative space to trigger subconscious fear, adding the jagged screeches layered deep into the sound mix, and the monster stays with you, even when he's not there. Number 4, Samuel's screams weren't faked. They were pulled from real tantrums. Noah Wiseman was 6 years old when the Babadook was filmed. He never saw the creature. He wasn't told the full story. Jennifer Kent shielded him from the darker parts of the movie, directing him carefully and editing around what he didn't need to know. But the screaming, that was all him. During long days on set, Noah, like any kid, would sometimes get overwhelmed. He'd cry, yell, or throw a tantrum, and the sound team was always rolling. Those raw outbursts became part of the final cut. Not staged, not scripted, just real frustration, captured in the moment, then layered into the scariest scenes. His mother stayed by his side every day. The child psychologist was on call, but even with protection, the performance felt disturbingly authentic. Viewers still talk about how relentless his cries were, piercing, panicked, and too real to ignore, because in a way, they were. The horror came through a child who didn't have to act it. He simply felt it. Number 5, no one on set was allowed to say monster, only grief. There was one rule on the set that everyone followed. No one was allowed to call the Babadook a monster. Not the actors, not the crew, not even in casual conversation. Jennifer Kent made it clear from day one. This wasn't a story about a creature. It was about something deeper. The word used on set and scripts and meetings was grief. Every performance was shaped around that idea. Amelia was being crushed by something she refused to face. Samuel was responding to the weight no one else would name. Even the Babadook's design came from sketches that looked like mourning figures from old books. No claws, no gore, just presence. Kent said the movie wasn't about defeating anything. It was about living with what's buried. And when the entire production treated the monster like emotional trauma, it changed how the scenes were played. Fear became personal. The horror wasn't somewhere outside the house. It was already in the room. Number 6, Essie Davis didn't sleep much during filming, and it shows. Amelia doesn't fall apart all at once. She breaks in slow motion, day by day, frame by frame. And that unraveling didn't come from special effects or clever lighting. It came from exhaustion. Real, intentional exhaustion. Essie Davis made the choice early on to strip herself down for the role. No glamour, no polished angles. She began showing up to set having barely slept. Some nights she kept herself awake on purpose. It gave her performance a raw, frayed edge, nervous energy that couldn't be faked. Her fingers twitch, her voice cracks mid-sentence, and her eyes carry the weight of someone who hasn't rested in days. The stress of the shoot only added to it. Tight schedules, intense scenes with a young co-star, screaming matches that had to be repeated over and over. At the end of production, Davis had poured everything into Amelia, mentally, emotionally, and physically. The result was a performance that didn't need makeup to look tired. It already was. And that fatigue became one of the movie's most haunting effects. Number 7, Jennifer Kent refused studio notes, even the ones that warned her. Jennifer Kent had offers. After her short movie Monster made the rounds, producers came calling, interested, excited, and ready to back her first feature. But every offer came with a string. More jump scares, a different ending, a bigger payoff. One even asked her to add a love interest. Kent turned them all down. She held the script close for years. When funding finally came through, partly from Kickstarter and Screen Australia, she signed on with full creative control. No rewrites, no rewired themes, no studio-mandated twists to make it more marketable. Some advisors warned her it would limit the movie's reach. They said the grief focus would turn audiences away. She made it anyway, on her terms. The result was a stripped-down psychological horror that leaned into discomfort. Critics praised the movie's boldness. The Babadook made dozens of best-of lists and earned Kent comparisons to early Polanski and Bergman. Number 8, the actor playing Samuel was shielded from the horror, but still had nightmares. Again, Noah Wiseman was 6 years old when the camera started rolling, way too young to understand what kind of movie he was a part of. And that was by design. Jennifer Kent and the crew built a controlled bubble around him. He never saw the Babadook in full costume. He never read the full script. Scenes were shot out of order and his reactions were carefully guided with child-safe context. Behind the scenes, his mother was always close. A psychologist was on standby. Crew members kept their tone light even during intense setups. It worked. On set, Noah stayed cheerful, but the story still found a way in. After filming ended, he began having nightmares. Not about monsters or shadows, but about separation, fear, and things being taken away. The emotion he brought to Samuel came from somewhere real. Not terror, but confusion. Not acting, but response. And that made it all the more convincing. What audiences heard in his screams and saw in his breakdowns was the ripple effect of a young actor absorbing the weight of a story meant to feel too heavy. Even with the safety nets, something still reached him. Number 9, the Babadook was designed to look like a Victorian demon clown. The design team didn't start with a monster template. They started with history books. Jennifer Kent wanted something unsettling, something that felt like it came from old nightmares. So they turned to 19th century horror illustrations, Victoria-era sketches of demons, clowns, and carnival performers that blurred the line between entertainment and fear. The long black coat, the top hat, the bone-thin hands. They were references. The Babadook's pale face echoed death masks and antique ventriloquist dummies. His form was stitched together from images of plaque doctors, shadow puppets, and spiritualist art from the 1800s. Every part of him felt like it belonged to a time when horror was quiet, theatrical, and uncomfortably elegant. Alex Juhasz, the movie's production designer, layered each element with purpose. The result was something older, stranger. A figure you might see in a faded book tucked deep in a dusty shelf. And once you see him, the image stays. Not because he's violent, because he looks like he's always been there. Number 10, the Babadook's movements were inspired by stop-motion corpses. The Babadook doesn't walk. He shifts, jerks, pauses too long between steps. His movement isn't natural, and that was the point. Jennifer Kent wanted every motion to feel broken, like something pulled from a silent movie that skipped a few frames. So the team turned to stop-motion horror from the early 20th century. Not smooth animation, but stiff, twitchy gestures inspired by puppet corpses and crude clay models. Each scene involving the creature was carefully choreographed. Some moments were filmed at a lower frame rate. Others were pieced together using multiple exposures and physical puppetry. Tim Purcell, who wore the costume, performed with exaggerated angles so the editors could later distort his body on screen. The result was movement that felt wrong in all the right ways. It was about discomfort, a hand that hovers too long, a tilt of the head that lingers, a glide that shouldn't be possible. The Babadook didn't need to run or roar. His movements were enough to tell you everything. Something has entered the room, and it doesn't belong. Now that you know these creepy facts, here's the real question. Was the Babadook just a character, or did something follow it out of the frame? Share your thoughts in the comments section below and tune in for our next Classic Movie Rewind.